David Fincher is one of the best directors of the last 30 years, and he has a new movie, The Killer, coming out in November, and it was actually kind of soft released in theaters in October. But leading up to the new film, I'm rewatching each of his films in order to prep for my new ranking. And because he is one of these directors that has put out so many great films, you guys usually want to know more about what I think about some of these films than I can put in a mere ranking where I only get to talk about a movie for about 2 minutes. So over here on my second channel, I wanted to put out extra thoughts on some of these movies, my extended ramblings or whatever you want to say about them. And they're not exactly reviews. They're kind of reviews. They have elements of that. And some of that is just kind of my insights, my perspective in different ways. And with a few of these, I actually did videos like this back when Mank came out, but I only put them out as Patreon exclusives. And I thought, since I'm planning on doing this for each of the movies, I might as well just re-release those videos over here on the second channel for everyone to be able to see, rather than having to make 3 additional videos that I have already made. With that said, that's what I'll be doing with The Social Network, Seven, and Zodiac. And here we go. And today we are talking about the movie Seven. Go ahead and let me know what your thoughts on the movie Seven down below in the comment section. And I'm going to operate for the assumption you guys have seen the movie Seven, so this is a spoiler review, so you can spoil away down below in the comments on the Patreon or on the YouTube, wherever you would like to comment. Going into this one, it's interesting because I've said it many times before, Alien 3 is the movie I hate the most. So naturally, Seven is a serial killer classic film. So you have this enormous jump in quality between the films. And anyone that knows the backstory of the making of Alien 3 knows that the movie's not bad because of David Fincher. The movie's bad because they had a very troubled production where they couldn't lock in the story they wanted to make. They kept hiring writers and directors, and then it kept falling through. And they're like, we just got to get this made. We announced a release date. Who's a director we can get that has a real cool visual style, and we'll give them the story to shoot it. So they hired David Fincher to just shoot whatever script that they had, and then they were going to make the movie in post-production. So they weren't really using him as a director in the normal sense that we think of the director as the guy that leads the whole production. He was just a hired gun to shoot the script. That's all they wanted. They've said that in the special features on the Blu-ray. And they did not have a completed script when they started shooting the movie. They paused at one point in time, left for several months, finished the script, and then went back to fill in the gaps to shoot more stuff. And then after production was done, they basically edited it without David Fincher. So technically he did shoot the movie and it looks good for what they could do, but he wasn't the one that shepherded the story or anything. So while technically Alien 3 is his first movie, the movie that's actually the first David Fincher film, that he was the creative force behind that movie, is Seven. Alien 3, he shot what he could. He was not the creative force coming up with the story or the one that edited the story to put it together, which are really important parts of the process. Seven is that movie where you truly start to see him come in and be the force of nature that is David Fincher, that's dominated cinemas for the last 25 years. And even as I'm preparing to do my next 31 on 31 with the Autop stream, when they proposed it, it was like, who are the big 3? And for them, the big 3 was David Fincher, Christopher Nolan, and who's our other guy? Tarantino. And that's a nice list to be among. And Alien 3, not really where that started. It started with Seven. And it's interesting to me rewatching it because I've seen this movie many, many times, probably over 10 times, but I haven't really watched it in about 10 years. So it's a film that I know very well, and watching it kind of with a fresh set of eyes is like my critical eyes now that I've become a movie critic. And seeing that at its core, in a lot of ways, it's a fairly straightforward serial killer movie of a serial killer killing people in a creative manner, and police officers are investigating. And that's the movie. They're trying to track the guy down. They have a couple leads, misdirects. They almost catch him. He gets away. Then we move into our third act. That's the template for a lot of these movies. The movie isn't great because it came up with this wild new concept that had never been done before. It's an example of how you take a tried and true formula. Serial killer with some interesting thing about him, police investigating, and execute it with excellence. And in doing so, you get a great film. So what are those little things about this one that just make it interesting? Well, I think even building into it that it's based on the 7 deadly sins just makes for something that's memorable. One of the things you're always trying to find in a movie is something that clicks and has a memorable element to it. So as you're watching the movie and you're tracking through the 7 deadly sins, it sticks with you and it leads to these horrifying kills. Why is this movie memorable? Also, because there's just a unique sickness to the way it's able to have him kill his victims, to where having not seen the movie in 10 years, I was like, oh, and then the next one is this, and then he does this. And there are all these sick, disturbing ways to kill people. And it is in certain ways a very graphic film, but in other ways, it's kind of tame compared to what it could be in light of what happens in the film, what they could actually show. It's the more disturbing version of the concept of what's happening. You're just makes you sick to the bottom of your stomach of what he does, rather than trying to make you sick by just showing you a bunch of blood and guts. It messes with your head, and that's what makes it so much more powerful. Beyond that, you always want to have your investigators having something that makes them interesting and representing very different places in the world. So you have Morgan Freeman, who leans into very much the cliche of these films. The cliche is you've got the cop that's retiring in just a week. That's the joke of what 80s, 90s cop movies had. And he's that. He's exactly that. And then you have the new guy coming in. Another cliche that in certain senses could make the movie feel just tired, bored, as these tropes have been played out over the previous 15, 20 years. But because they're written with such depth in what they're doing, that the movie is exploring their worldviews, that you have the cynical, burned out cop that looks at the world and says, how could I bring a child into this world that's so evil? But it's not that he's not like a depressed guy, and it's not that he doesn't have a sense of humor. He just has a job that has just jaded him to his core. And then you have the new guy that is in way over his head, that doesn't understand just how gross this stuff gets, how severe it is, and the toll that it takes. And you take them on a journey that plays that out in a way that even as you get to the conclusion, the final twist, the what's in the box, it's a payoff for the journey that each of them have been on. One of them said, I don't want anything to do with this. I want out. Like, I want to retire. Please don't make me do this. The other one's like, oh, I want to do it. I want to do it. I want to do it. And so when you get to those final moments where you want anything else to happen, it's the fulfillment of the journey of the characters. It's meaningful. It's not just shocking. Oh, and then there's a head in a box. No. It pays off the gimmick of the serial killer. It gives you the 7th one in a clever way, or I guess 6th and 7th ones in a clever way, while at the same time fully taking what was established in the first bit of the film about how these characters see the world, each of their perspectives, and bringing it to the disturbing conclusion, all tying the elements together. It's the right kind of big final twist reveal that feels earned. It makes sense, and it ties everything together. And in the case of this one, in a way that you're like, oh, why does it have to be this? Along the same lines, I mean, you have to talk about David Fincher going from Alien 3 to this movie, and it's just feeling he has such a handle on it, on the tone, on the vibe, on the characters, having a distinct style, having a distinct look that even as you watch it now, there's things about it that very much tie it to when it came out. Like, or even in the opening credits as Nine Inch Nails is playing. And I didn't realize that it was like, I was listening to it, but like, this is Nine Inch Nails, and I know that he's worked with the guy in the Ford scores movies, but I don't think he scored this one. They go, oh, it's a remix of the song Closer by Nine Inch Nails. This is not a Trent Reznor scored film. Okay. But like it ties it to a time period in a certain sense. In another sense, it hasn't really aged. It still looks, feels great, and might as well could be released now. And besides some of these slight musical choices would feel just like a contemporary film. And the way it's edited, the way things look, the way it cuts through in these sequences, that it doesn't want to just linger on gore, but it's still shocking and gets under your skin through what it does reveal, the way it reveals it. And you think there's a dead body somewhere, but it's not a dead body, and knowing just how much to show and what not to show, balancing it all so well. Even a way that, I watching through a lot of these movies, and I watched through the Alien movies to watch the Alien movies for a previous video that I did. But, my wife was turning away and couldn't watch Alien 3 because it just lingered so much on the gore and the way that it was shot, edited and everything, and this autopsy of a little girl. And she's like, oh, just tell me when the sequence is done, and lingered away, just made you feel gross in the wrong way. And this one, while going to even grosser places, doesn't manage to do that while disturbing you on a far deeper level for other reasons. And that's a director that just has control of their film, knows what they're doing and why they're doing it. So, honestly, I don't really have any negatives on this one. There's nothing that stood out to me is that, like I could point out the cliches as I did before, but they work. We use cliches because people like them, and I don't think that's a bad thing. If you find a way to use them where you add something new, it's fine to have the retiring cop teamed up with the new overly eager guy that doesn't realize what he's in for. It's fine to do that if you have something new to add, and this movie absolutely had something new to add. For me, it's not the most rewatchable film. That's why I haven't watched it in 10 years. I tend to gravitate not so much in the direction of films that make me feel bad. Ever since, married and have kids, I'm like, I like the escapism, and I don't want to escape to a world that's even darker than the one that we're in. That's not really criticism of the film, but that's just why maybe in the past have I not talked as much about Fincher? Why in the past have I not covered some of his stuff as much? It's a little bit of that. He lingers in a world that I'm not as interested in, but when I watch it, it's very fulfilling and satisfying. So those are some of my thoughts on the movie Seven, and just when you think of what are the great serial killer movies, of course, Silence of the Lambs, and then I think Seven come to mind. And especially with Seven, it's the example of the movie that I could summarize it to you and it would just sound so generic. But in the execution from David Fincher, from the performances from Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, with the way the characters are written, to the way the killings are done in concept, in execution for the screen, thematically it all comes together so well to elevate it above the rest of the genre. So I'd give it an A. It's an incredible film, an incredible achievement, and one of the best serial killer movies ever made. And if you haven't seen it, when you're in the mood and can handle a very dark film, and I don't know why I even said that since I told you this was a spoiler review at the beginning, but when you can handle it, check it out. It is certainly a film that all film lovers need to see. Let me know your thoughts down below, and keep talking movies too much.